Welcome to Powering Through Life on the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Teresa Sims, and I'm a life coach, an NLP practitioner, and a multiple award-winning author and 3-time #1 best-selling co-author. Each week on Powering Through Life, my guest and I discuss a special topic that is close to their hearts. Together we will explore the challenges they have faced in life and learn what strategies and tools they have used to power through their lives. Today, my guest is a friend of mine and a lovely woman, and her name is Joan Ridsdell. Joan is the founder and creator of Wiser Woman Coaching and Personal Development. So, Joan, welcome to Powering Through Life. I would like for you to tell our listeners all about yourself and who you are. So, welcome.
Thank you so much, Teresa. We've been trying to get this organized for a while, so I am so delighted to be here with you today. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so glad we finally did manage to get this scheduled, and I'm really excited to bring you to the Divas That Care Network.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor, actually, to be interviewed by you. I've listened to you before and in your interviews, and love that you have conversations and all the work that you do as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So tell us about you, Joan.
Okay. Well, where to start? My goodness. So I'm a life coach, and I'm also a registered social worker. And, you know, I've dedicated my practice to serving others. So many years that I've done social work and worked particularly with women. I have, you know, in my toolbox, of course, after working in social work for many years, I have lots of things in my toolbox, and so I'm kind of babbling a little bit. So I don't quite know where to start.
Well, tell me what kind of tools you have in your toolbox. What do you typically use?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things when I started in social work practice, I worked in an organization that worked with women, and we did lots of counseling and life skills work with women. And one of the things that my executive director insisted was that we all were trained in reality therapy choice theory. And part of that was so that we could, it's such a great process to work with people and help them make good choices in their lives and learn how to shift their beliefs and, you know, create amazing self-esteem and all those kinds of things. And so that was the foundation for my counseling work and my social work practice. And then over the years, I've added all kinds of things. I worked with Steve Davis in Winnipeg, who has passed away, but he taught NLP, and so neuro-linguistic programming, and so I was trained in that. And so I've done lots of other, and learned lots of other tools and modalities to, you know, in terms of personal development and counseling processes. So I have now almost reached retirement age, and a few years ago, and I can tell you a little bit more about this, but a few years ago I decided that I wanted to do coaching. Coaching was something that came to my attention when I was in my 20s, and I was just starting my social work practice and didn't have space to learn coaching at that point. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward to 2015, I decided that I would, with retirement sort of on the horizon, that I would jump into coaching. And actually, although I'd been coaching over the years as part of my social work practice, I wanted to do a more formalized process, or learn a formalized process. And so I started coaches training at Erickson Coaching International. And part of the reason I did that was because they use quite a few NLP techniques and processes within their training. And so that was a really good fit for me. So I completed my coaches training and started my business, Wiser Woman Coaching and Personal Development.
Can you tell me, Joan, what do you feel the difference is between the major differences between what the type of coaching that you and I do versus your social work aspect. Is there a major difference, or what is the difference?
Yeah, so coaching, how I see the difference between coaching and counseling, basically, is in counseling you're moving into the past and working with past issues that keep you stuck in the present, and that's a very simplified sort of perspective about it. With coaching, although you do this with counseling, but it's the focus is different. The focus is about, I'm here right now, I want to move into my future, and I want to create a plan to do that, or I need to figure out where I'm going into my future. And coaching really gives you the tools and the techniques to help you move forward. So it's very much a forward, positive perspective. And the only time that I, at this point, because I don't do counseling anymore, the only time that I go back into someone's past is if I'm what I call mining for gold, which is, mining for the strengths, the things that have worked in your past that you can use now and into your future.
Right, because a lot of those things are buried in our subconscious mind, are they not?
Yes, absolutely, or we're not aware of them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the kinds of, you and I were just talking about this, the kinds of things that happen to us often have what we consider to be a silver lining in them. And so sometimes it's useful to look at, from those situations, what can we learn? How can we use those situations to create strength within us and move forward in our lives?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, I know NLP usually has a lot to do with looking at what's gone on in the past slightly, but being able to find the positives and changing the mindset around that and changing the behaviors which move us forward into the future, which is exactly what you're referring to, correct?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So how does coaching sit true with you? Does it feel like a really good fit for you? Does it feel like this is truly your life that's meant to be?
It does. Honestly, when I started coaches training, I realized that was, I really wish I had been able to do it years ago. And it just didn't fit with I was having kids and I didn't have money and all those things when you're starting out. Mm-hmm. And then of course I got so busy raising kids and working in social work that I didn't have the space then either. So it was just lovely that I was at a place in my life where I could actually jump into some training. And I love the perspective. I love that, and I love the things that I draw from social work and from my counseling practice into coaching. So just a tiny example is when you're training to be a coach, they talk about the coach's position, which is exactly what you do as a counselor. You have some empathy for the person. You want to support the person that you're working with, but you don't take on that person's life as your own. You don't take on their issues as your own. Your job as a coach and as a counselor is to really be there to support them, guide them. And with coaching, we base a lot of our work on those sort of powerful questions that we ask people so that they get to do the work that they need to do.
Yes.
And I think that is so powerful. And basically, we're the facilitators of that process, but it's the client that does the actual work. And I think I love to see the transformations in people and feel so privileged because it's completely a privilege to be able to work with somebody and watch them shift from where they're at now and feeling stuck or not knowing where they're going or what to do or how to do it to figuring that out.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, Joan, do you find that the client actually does have the answer to their deepest question or their situation. They just haven't had the tools to help them uncover it.
Yes, I do. I think that's very true. We most often know within us what works, what doesn't work, and sometimes it's a matter of just uncovering that, as you say. Or the other thing that I love to see is that people will become curious about what they need and what they need to do in order to move forward. And so then they go out and find the answers. And, I think that our job as coaches is to really facilitate that process of helping others be curious about why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads us into one area that you really like to focus on, I guess, because it's a personal thing for you as well, if you don't mind my saying that, is surrounding emotional eating.
Such a passion of mine.
So tell me what emotional eating is first to start with.
Well, I think it's the issue of weight, and often weight goes along with emotional eating, although not always. But so for myself, I have spent more than 40 years caught up in dieting and what we would consider to be diet culture. And food is such an emotional thing. We use food to celebrate in our lives, right? We get a new job and we go out for dinner and we celebrate. We have family over and we celebrate together. We break bread together. Cultures have different meanings of different foods. And so, food does have an emotional perspective to it. Where the work that I do with mostly women is to support them in figuring out how not to use food as the only way to manage their emotions. And that becomes a challenge because food is it's a go-to. We love food. It's readily available. We use food often as emotional eaters, what I consider to be an emotional eater, to manage the internal stuff that's going on, as those feelings or those thoughts that we don't want to look at, and then we create habits around. For example, when I come home from work, even though I think I might have debriefed my day on my way home, I come in the door and the first thing I want to do is eat crackers. Now I've worked on this for right, and it's a de-stressor for me. It's I feel connected to those crackers because they sort of start my evening for me, and they help me de-stress, and that's purely an emotional reaction to what my day has been like.
That's interesting. At least it's not ice cream, right?
Well,
or cookies.
Or cookies. The issue is it doesn't really matter what food it is. It's that I'm using that food to manage how I'm feeling and to feel better in that moment. The challenge is then, of course, when we eat and we use food in that way, we don't feel better ultimately, because then what happens is that we're not listening to our bodies and we're not paying attention to what it is that we really need. And so my work with women is to help them transform that emotional eating process and pattern to a more intuitive way of eating and living. And then, of course, if we live in larger bodies, then what happens over time is, as you begin to step out of dieting and you begin to nourish your body, and you change the beliefs that you have around food and what you need to be doing with food and how you need to be supporting yourself, then your body has the opportunity of losing weight naturally. And so gradually your body lets go of all that weight that you're holding. Because weight is not only about the fat on your body, it's also about the emotional weight that you carry.
Yeah, a lot of baggage, right? And we all have something like that in our somewhere in our lives. And,
Right.
you know, you and I have had many conversations around this topic too, and it's not a
Mm-hmm.
matter of, because, I like to bake, so it's not a matter of me denying myself having that scone once in a while, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I crave it, but I like to have a scone once in a while. So, but I know that it's not giving me the complete nourishment that fruits and vegetables and meat would have. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to deny myself, because the minute I tell myself I absolutely cannot have that, my subconscious is going to kick in and say, but I have to have it, and it's just going to become a vicious cycle. And then,
Yeah.
one may lead to two, one may lead to three.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
have a healthy aspect around, healthy relationship with food, as you say, then, yeah, as you've said, like, the weight will come off.
Well, if you know someone who's kind of a naturally a smaller-bodied person, and who eats what we consider to be sort of normal, or in a natural way, in an intuitive way, they eat when they're hungry, and they stop when they're satisfied, and food is not an issue for them. They don't consider food to be either good, certain foods to be good or bad.
Right.
They consider food to be food, and they make the choice to eat based on the need to nourish their bodies, and then they nourish themselves with celebrations, and they have that piece of cake. They're okay with leaving food on their plate if their body is telling them that they're satisfied. So it's a completely different way of thinking about what we do with food. And of course, then there's other ways that you can nourish yourself and manage those feelings that come up on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And creating new neural pathways in our brain when we start to change the thinking and changing the beliefs, and then practice different behaviors. Because I think, the way that we think about things then triggers the feelings that we have. And so often we're just focused on the feelings. So I come in the door and I'm stressed from the day, and all I can think about is I want crackers because that'll manage my stress for me. That'll help me, calm down and manage that stress. But I'm not really thinking about what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to go back then and look at, okay, what's going on for me that I come in the door and I automatically want to just eat. And right. It doesn't matter what it is, really, right? It's that process of really pausing to think, okay, something is happening for me. I need to check in with my body. Am I hungry? No? Okay. There's something emotional going on for me, and I need to sort that out.
Yeah, so if it's something that's going on, rather than being hungry, what is the real catalyst for you wanting to go to that food?
Absolutely. And then making some decisions around, well, I can eat if I want to because I'm not dieting, and I've given that up. So what else could I do that would be more useful? Maybe I need to go for a little walk. Maybe I need to just make a cup of tea and sit and have a cup of tea and debrief the day. Maybe I need to go and chat with a friend, or write in a journal, or watch a little bit of TV, or there's so many things that we need to be doing in order to nurture and care for ourselves. And that really, at the end of the day, it comes down to how are you looking after yourself? Are you putting yourself first? Are you, because we often as women and men, I know men who do this as well, so I really shouldn't be gender specific here, but I think, we often will look after everybody else, but we don't look after ourselves. And right, and so we're jumping into making sure everybody else is okay, but then we're left feeling with all of these feelings roaming around inside our system, and then we don't take that moment to say, what do I need? How am I going to care for myself so that I feel good? I have more joy in my life. I'm happier. and I'm not using food to manage those emotions that are so important and signals to tell me what I need to know.
Right. So so often we go, as women, we go from the 9 to 5 or whatever our day looks like in the work world to all of a sudden that switches off and we're into the nurturing phase of our day. And then we're in the, we have to plan for the next day phase and the rest of the week. And there's hardly any time for us when we need to be on the top of that list versus maybe not even being on the list at all, which is what my life used to be like, but it's now switched. So something simple like just coming home and doing, like you say, de-stressing, debriefing, or doing something very simple as a mindfulness exercise or a yoga session or something that will just take that stress away from us and then just prepare ourselves in our minds for the next phase of what we need to tackle, like meal prep for dinner, all that kind of stuff, and spending time doing something for ourselves as well. So take the dog for a walk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Meditating, tapping, doing there's all kinds of things you can do to help you sort through those feelings and then taking action that is better for you than using food, because of course we get into that diet cycle where, we feel really guilty about eating because we've always been on a diet. I spent 40 years on a diet and had many issues as a child with being chubby and with being teased about that and all kinds of things. And I think, that's where it stemmed from. So I started my first diet, my official diet, a parent-approved diet, when I was 10, and have been dieting ever since. And what got me, Teresa, was this, when my brother was kidnapped and murdered by terrorists in 2015 and 16.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so true with trauma. You have an opportunity with a traumatic event or trauma to look at your past, look at kind of where you've been, where you're at now, and where you want to go in your life. And one of the things that struck me after his murder was, I thought life can change on a dime. And really, do I want to spend the rest of my years counting points, because I was a big Weight Watchers member, counting points and feeling horrible about myself because I could not maintain a weight loss.
Yeah.
And when I look back at my dieting history, because I, as I say, spent a lot of years dieting, there was only twice in my life when I actually reached a goal weight that was deemed appropriate by Weight Watchers or by kind of the diet industry. And the first time was when I was 18, and I beautifully got down to 112 pounds. I looked fabulous.
Wow.
But I did that through binging and purging.
Oh, and now that's healthy, isn't it? Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Oh.
So, of course, that lasted about 3 minutes. And then a few years before 2015, I went back to Weight Watchers, determined to get the weight off and figure out how to keep it off. And, of course, it took me a year and a half to lose 15 pounds because my body was not happy about me forcing it to get down to a weight that I couldn't maintain.
Right.
And so then, of course, the minute that stress happened, I ate and drank my way through 7 months of kidnapping and murder and put some weight on. And, your body, had I paid attention to my body, had I learned how to do that over all of those years, my body would have kept me safe in a way that was, I was meant to be safe. And that's what happens when we don't pay attention to our bodies. Dieting will teach you not how to listen to your body, but about how many points you need to eat during the day.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, the passion here is about helping women let go of dieting and that whole perspective and mentality and get back to really, being in their bodies and recognizing their body signals, honoring those signals, and using food in a way that is so gratifying, without us feeling bad about eating a scone, for example, or eating an apple. I think we need to get back to caring for ourselves in ways that we were meant to be naturally.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I definitely agree with that, because I was one that was like you, perpetual dieter from the time I was young, and I did the Weight Watchers aspect when I was in my teens. And now keep in mind that I grew up eating one meal a day from the time I was very young till I was in my mid-20s. And when I went to Weight Watchers and ate their point, amount for my day, I gained weight. I totally gained weight because my body was not used to having all that food. So it didn't do me any favors. But I think, when we go on diets, and the ones particularly that aren't suited for our bodies, really, we're putting our bodies into trauma.
We are.
And
absolutely.
That's why, like you were saying, it takes your body some time to adjust to what you're doing to it now, and you're causing it more upheaval, and you're causing it to react rather than just be. And it's amazing. And
1,200 calories a day, which is what the diet that I have always been on, and sort of every time you Google a diet, it's we should eat about 1,200 calories a day. And that's just not enough. Your body needs more calories to be fully functioning, and it needs all of the food groups. And so, the work that I've done with a dietitian, a non-diet dietitian, which I think is just so great. She says that your body needs to work optimally and to work in a really healthy way. Your body needs to have nourishment, and dieting doesn't nourish your body enough to have your body work optimally. Which is why then, when you cut out food groups, when you don't have enough calories, of course your body is going to say to you, "I'm holding on to this because I don't know when my next meal is coming, and you're depriving me. So I'm going to make sure one way or the other that you're going to eat," right? And so then we binge, or then we overeat, or then we go through these periods of the yo-yo dieting where we stop dieting and we eat and eat and eat, and then we feel so awful about ourselves. So then we get back to 1,200 calories a day, or a diet, and we end up not being able to maintain that. It's not sustainable physiologically as well as emotionally and psychologically.
Absolutely. So do you feel that the word guilt plays a massive factor into this unhealthy?
It's huge.
Yeah, because it's almost like a diet in itself, isn't it, the word guilt?
Right.
Because it creates this, oh my God, you shouldn't have this, but yet I want it. Then when I have it, I feel really guilty about it, and then it just creates this unhealthy pattern in us.
It does. I spent so many years feeling like a failure because I couldn't reach a goal weight that was prescribed, by the diet industry or BMI or whatever the measurement. And secondly, then when I did reach it, I couldn't maintain it. And what it meant to maintain it, that lower weight, I would have had to continue dieting for the rest of my life. And even when I did that, I still gained weight because my body at some point just finally said, "Look, it's crazy what you're doing," and you have to figure out a way. If weight loss is something that is important to you, then it has to be done in a way that is not dieting, is a natural process. And that means then you're going to have to nurture your body and nourish your body in a way that nourish your body and your mind and your soul in a way that you can sustain the weight loss.
Yeah, exactly. And that includes a lot of other things, including exercise and activity, right?
Absolutely.
Which I know you're doing. Are you still doing your boxing?
I'm still doing boxing, not as just because of busyness and traveling and stuff like that with because I also work 4 days a week in a job for another year. And so I get to it when I can. But what I love about it is that I listen to my body. So when I feel like my body wants to box and I feel like I want to box and do that hour of intense workout, I go and do that. And then the other thing is I love walking, and I love walking outside. So I spend a fair bit of time walking, and even if it's just 30 minutes a day or every other day, I try and get some walking in. But I spent so many years off and on dieting to lose weight, exercising to lose weight. And so when I started this journey, I found of intuitive eating and living, I decided that I would start to really pay attention to my body, and that I would stop exercising to lose weight, that I would start exercising to feel good in my body and to have my body work in the best way possible as I get older, particularly. And so, I do things that I really enjoy now, and I don't go to classes when I don't, that I know are going to be hard to do, and the purpose is not because of weight loss; it's because of me wanting to feel good in my body.
Absolutely.
And to feel strong.
Yeah, not punish yourself, because exercise and an active lifestyle should not be punishing. It should be enjoyable.
Exactly.
And that's key. I mean, having fun doing what you're doing and doing it with a friend or a partner or whoever, and just enjoying it, celebrating it, because it all comes full circle, and it is all part and parcel of having a good, solid, healthy lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all of those combinations of things, Teresa, that as a coach, that I help women figure out. And it's a step-by-step process, and really beginning to think differently about who you are, who you want to be, how do you want to approach your body, and how do you want to live your life so that you've got more joy and more happiness, and that you're exercising because you want to feel good. You're eating food because you love that food and because it feels good in your body, not because you're on a diet and you want to drop 20 pounds.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I was one of those ones, I was such an athlete when I was young, and then had children and lost it, and, dieted and all this sort of thing. And, after my last car accident in 2012, the injuries are such that it's difficult to do a complete workout like I used to, even though my mind keeps telling me I want to do that and I should do that and that's what I need. But no, it really isn't what I need. I do I do some walking, I do rowing, I do a lot of Pilates and a lot of yoga and a lot of active stretching, which is really key as well. So it's absolutely and you know what? That number that the medical industry, sorry to say this, but they say that I should weigh is never, ever going to happen. And I don't really care about that number. I mean, I don't know who dreamed that number up, but they didn't take into account, a person's heredity, because my family, they're farm people. They're bigger, stockier people. They're just that way. That's how we are all built. And, for me to be 148 pounds is at 5'9", it's not going to happen. And that's okay. I'm fine with it. I'm working at getting my fitness levels back to where I feel good and where my body is strong and functioning well. And that's all that matters to me. And eating well and healthy and not starving myself. Exactly.
There's a whole movement that's happening in the world right now as a backlash to the dieting industry and the culture that we live in, which, values thinness over natural weight. And it's called Health at Every Size. And it sets out some really good thoughts about the fact that, whatever size your body is, you can be healthy. And certainly if there are issues that, your body struggles with, like diabetes or celiac disease or whatever it is, then you're obviously going to address those issues. But we place such importance on being thin in our world. And people who live in larger bodies are discriminated against. And so the Health at Every Size movement is really a political movement, or has morphed into a political movement about, making sure that people in larger bodies or extremely thin bodies are not discriminated against based on their weight and the size of their body. And I think there's some merit to all of that, and I certainly value the fact that there is that movement, because I think when I look back at my mother, and God bless her, I loved my mom, but she was really discriminatory against people who were in larger bodies and would say terrible things about them, and I didn't understand that there are issues around weight, and some of those issues stem from the culture that we live in that says you're a bad person, you're not a good person, you're lazy if you are living in a larger body. Mm-hmm. And that's just not fair. I mean, we all deserve to be treated fairly and equally and respectfully and honored for who we are, whatever size we're at.
Absolutely. And who are we to judge what is someone else's life or someone else's size? We're not perfect either, so we have no right to judge anyone else. And
right.
in this society, that happens a lot, which is really unfortunate for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Joan, what would you think is the biggest hurdle people have when it comes to adopting intuitive eating and natural weight loss?
Well, first of all, it's stepping into a place where you can actually let go of dieting and that whole mindset, which infiltrates our lives in so many different ways. And then once you're able to do that, I think then, the rest of it is just a step-by-step process that you learn to think about things differently, as we've talked about. The other thing that's really difficult for people is then as part of that challenge of letting go of that diet mentality, intuitive eating then becomes the diet. And intuitive eating is not a diet. It's a way of living. And, here again, I mean, how many times did I hear with Weight Watchers, well, Weight Watchers is a way of living. But intuitive eating is really, truly about being able to be in your own body. And as I've said before, really listen to your body's signals. And there's an in-depth process that we go through in order to let go of dieting and being able to step into our bodies and really experience our bodies and honor our body's signals. And so I think that that's the biggest challenge. When I was mentoring a woman who had started intuitive eating, and she was talking about, well, was she doing it right? And could she still, just monitor her food in one of the weight loss trackers? And I said, I think the thing to be aware of here is that intuitive eating is not a diet. And she went, oh, I got it. Okay. This is different. Yeah, this is different.
So there was an awakening that happened then.
Right. So
it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And, it's that word diet needs to be removed from the dictionary in our minds, because it's just not right. I don't know who created that, but it's about the choices we make and what suits our bodies and what suits, our health, our own health.
Yeah.
Right.
And living in your body so that you're not eating according to or living according to an external plan or a plan that somebody else who doesn't know your body says you this is how you should live and this is how you should eat.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
exactly. So what would be one piece of advice you would give to someone who is looking at changing their relationship with food and eating? And
Well, I mean, I think explore intuitive eating, and think about what would it be like for you if you were able to let go of dieting. What would that feel like? Some people can't even imagine that, right? They're so entrenched in that whole world. And I think, of course, I'm biased because I'm a coach who works in this area. And so I think it's always great to work with someone who can support you through that process, because as it turns out, it's not an easy thing to let go of dieting, because, as I said, it sort of infiltrates every aspect of your life. And but I think that if you're wanting to step off that diet roller coaster, I think the place to start would be really looking at how you can begin step by step just to let go of dieting and stop dieting. And there's some great resources out there. I mean, certainly working with a coach like myself or someone else who works in this area is great. But there's also some resources. Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch wrote the Bible on intuitive eating, and it's called Intuitive Eating, a revolutionary program that works, and that's available. And that's how I started. I started doing some research. I Googled how to stop dieting, and that came up, and I started doing some other research, and there's lots of stuff out there that's really great. And I think so starting there, I think, is a really good idea.
That's great information, because we need to find what works for ourselves. Because we are all so unique, but also working with a coach like yourself, because we all need support. Going through that journey can be quite an upheaval to ourselves, our minds, our bodies, everything. So working with someone that has knowledge of that, has experience in it like you do, would be fascinating and would be really helpful, because coaches do need coaches as well, and we all have a unique background, a unique experience, that we do have that solid information on what it's like to be there, so what it's like to go through the process ourselves. So that gives us a little bit of an edge up, and I guess, if you want to phrase it that way, but having that knowledge and having that experience can really make the difference for someone who's going through that process as well.
Absolutely. I think that's really true. I think had I didn't work with a coach when I started, but I felt like I had enough because of my background in counseling and coaching that I could work myself through it. But in lots of ways, I wish I had started with a coach, who I think the process would have been a whole lot easier for me had I had someone to talk things through with. Now I have counseling friends who are or friends who are in the counseling business, and so I've done that with them, which has been great. But I certainly would recommend working with a coach if you can, because I think it just helps you be accountable, and it helps you sort through things that you don't even, as you enter into this journey, you don't even realize the things that you come across are so diet oriented, and yet we don't recognize that. And they're just some great tools to be offered through a coach. And how do you learn to listen to your body? Well, what does hunger actually feel like?
Yeah.
And how do you know when your body tells you to stop eating? What are the signals? And each one of us has different signals. So it's a journey, and it's a process to really figuring out each step of the way what you need to do in order to be completely free of dieting and allow your body to lose weight naturally.
Yeah, exactly. And I find even at my stage of life too, that even though I've gone through the eating healthy aspect as well and dieting, like, all the time, I find that when things start to pile up on me, I revert back to the one meal a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happens so fast that I don't even recognize it. But there's
right.
that trap again, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
starving my body and I'm not doing what I should be doing for myself.
Right.
But yet, I have my age-old excuses. Well, I'm not hungry.
Right.
Why would I eat if I'm not hungry? But I do need to nourish at the same time. So there's that fine line, isn't there?
There is a fine line. And it's interesting because, I was thinking the other day, we absolutely are horrified at people who will eat more than they need, than their bodies need. We're horrified at that. But we don't in the diet world comment on people like you who will eat one meal a day, because obviously that's going to help you lose weight over time, right? Right?
Sure.
And yet,
that hasn't happened yet,
not
Joe.
No, but you did say when you were eating as a kid and into your 20s that your body was slimmer, and that you ate one meal a day.
Mm-hmm.
And some people would say now that that gets into a whole another realm of issues. But in the diet world, you might be praised actually for eating that one meal a day if you weren't hungry the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet that's a problem, right? That's not normal eating.
No, it's not. And I didn't realize that. I mean, at the time, that started back when I was 5 or 6 years old, and that became my pattern. I didn't know it wasn't right. I didn't know it wasn't good. That was what I could get. And,
right.
I did all sorts of sports at the same time. And I thought, geez, when I look back, how did I do all of that when I wasn't even nourishing myself? And it's amazing what our bodies can tolerate.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
in those young years when you're developing and growing and all that sort of thing. And yet, now it's time to break all those bad, unhealthy habits and patterns and just go into a place where we need to feed our bodies, our minds, and our souls.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a healthy way.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? And soulfully. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, Joan, I know you've started Wiser Woman. Can you give me the definition of what it stands for, what Wiser Woman stands for?
Oh, yes. I came up with Wiser Woman because, I wanted to work with women mostly. And then Wiser, when we are stuck in dieting or stuck often in really anything, we don't tend to use the inner resources that we have. And so WISER is an acronym for our inner wisdom, intuition, self-compassion, energy, and resilience. And it's all of those inner resources that we have at our disposal when we tap into them and when we nurture them and we listen to them that can be so healing for us and help us set boundaries and set limits and let go of dieting and all of those kinds of things if we use them, and they're natural to us.
Right.
We just often don't listen to them, or we ignore them, or we don't know that we have them.
Well,
right?
that's it. Or we shut them off for some other reason that, is not always to our advantage. But it's great to listen to that inner wisdom that we have, because we do all have it. It just sometimes it needs to be reawakened. And this is the perfect time to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know you've done that in a recent book that we've both co-authored with Candace Gish and the Divas Network. And I read your story the other day, and it's very moving, very, very moving.
Oh, thank you. And yours too. I think what an opportunity for both of us to tell our stories, basically, and there's lots of transformation there for each of us in the book. I think we've been able to tell a story that has is about transformation and growth, and that's what the whole book was about, right?
Right.
It's fabulous, yeah.
Right. And it's Discover the Journey, is it not? That's the title of it, if I remember correctly. Discover the Journey. Yeah, and it's fabulous, that Candace provides all these opportunities for women to become authors and to share their stories in her different series. And it's a nice opportunity that we finally got to be together in a book, and we finally got to do this interview as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, speaking of journey, I mean, one of the things that I've done is called, as part of my coaching, is Join the Journey. I have a private Facebook group, and Join the Journey is the name of my blog post and my newsletter. And because I think that this whole thing about transforming emotional eating and learning how to lose weight naturally and all those kinds of things that we've talked about, it's part of a journey. And the journey, I don't think we ever get to the final destination with this journey. It's ongoing, and it's all about learning who we are and what we need and how to satisfy those needs effectively and in a way that brings us joy and brings us happiness and gets us to use those wiser woman inner resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know you had a favorite saying that you used to like, and it was trust the process. Does that still apply to you now?
Oh, that's an interesting one, because that was my go-to phrase for absolutely everything. When I couldn't control what was happening outside of me, and I would just calm myself down with trust the process. And then my brother was kidnapped and murdered, and I thought, well, that process was, I couldn't trust the process, because negotiations, hostage negotiations, the whole issue around kidnapping and politics, and he got caught up in that. That was not a process that I could trust. Right. And it really completely shattered my belief in that one can trust the process. What I came to from that after, I'd gone for counseling and done some trauma work, was that there is a process in life, and we are all on a journey. And really the only thing that we can control is how we manage within ourselves and what we do within ourselves. And that is really the process that I can trust. I can trust myself to manage and work through whatever it is I need to work through, including the intuitive eating, including the, transforming emotional eating. And so I realized that over the years prior to my brother's kidnapping and murder, that I had been thinking about the process that's outside of me. And so it really is about trusting yourself
right.
to do whatever you need to do and sort it out, and that we can, and we have the ability to do it. It might be painful, but it's absolutely the ability that we have within ourselves to work through whatever issue comes up for us.
Right. And, it's interesting, when I was working with my coach through, my certification and everything, he kept saying to me, trust the process, trust in the process. I'm like, what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean to have faith that we can get through this?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting when you dissect that and you stop to think about it, like, what does it really mean? And it would mean something totally different for every one of us, I think.
Right. I think so. I think, and that's, that's why I had to sort that out, because it really shattered my foundation.
Yeah.
About everything around, how people treat each other, how the world works, why people do cruel things to each other, and all of those things. And so I had to rebuild that, really rebuild my foundation in a sense. It changes one when we've gone through trauma. It changes your perspective. But what it did for me was it just really reinforced the fact that I can trust myself. And the process that I go through when I'm working through something is a process that I have control over that process. I don't have control over anything else outside of me, but I have control over what I choose to do with the issues that I'm working with and how I work through them and who I connect with and what I decide to do. So that was such a good learning for me. Even though I've been a social worker and a coach all my life, or most of my, my professional career, and I know and knew that really all we have control over is what's within us. Right. But I think I'd lost that in that phrase and realized at the end of the day that phrase was, what I was thinking about was that it was outside of me, not inside of me.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. And, we have to define what that means to us, don't we?
We do. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So I think everyone should join the journey and learn a new way of eating healthy and having a healthy relationship with how we eat, how we approach food, how we see food, and how we see ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're going to have all of your contact information on the segment when it's posted to the Divas Network. So I would encourage everyone to really get in touch with you and find out what intuitive eating is. Find out if it's the right thing for you to do at this point in time, or, good food for thought for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk with anyone if they're curious or just want to do a call. Jump on a call with me. I'm happy to talk about this. As you can tell, I've talked a fair bit.
No, that's fine. That's what this is all about, is to share information and just to create awareness around a topic that's meaningful and hasn't had an impact on your life as well. So, you are the expert on this because you've been through this journey. So that does make you an expert. You have the tools and you have the wisdom and you have wiser woman. So that's we need to get in touch with Joan. So please, everyone, get in touch with Joan. Now, what would you say do you have a favorite quote and saying now, Joan, or are you just kind of taking a break from that aspect?
No, I think, to trust the process is still one that I think about, and I occasionally will say to myself, but I don't really have one right now that kind of resonates. I mean, join the journey. That certainly resonates with me because of the process that I've been on and the work that I've done around stopping dieting and learning to live more intuitively. And so join the journey is something that I'm very passionate about. But I don't have that sort of quick phrase like I used to do at this point in my life. And I don't really feel like I need it. I mean, it's, I'm right. I think it's, I think it's as I step into, and I'm continually working on this stuff as well, myself, at learning to live more intuitively within my body and honor my body and the way that I think and feel about myself, etc. And this is an ongoing journey that all of us are probably involved in some way or another. And so I think that's sort of where I go with that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the trust the process worked and served its purpose for you at one point in time. And it's not like we have to be attached to these phrases, but sometimes, they do give us that little bit of spark, that little bit of hope. And, it's okay. It's joining the journey is what you're on right now. And you will succeed in this journey because I have every faith in you, and I've seen how it works with you, and I've seen how passionate and heard how passionate you are about this, and I think everyone needs to take this exploration and find out, discover. I mean, take a step back and and explore how we have a relationship with food, what that relationship looks like, what it does for us, what it doesn't do for us, and just explore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank
Teresa,
you.
this has been fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm so glad we got to do this, Joan. So, as I say, all of your contact information will be listed under your segment, and I encourage everyone to get in touch with you, and we will be sharing this out on social media as always. So, Joan, thank you so much for being a fantastic guest today and sharing your Wiser Woman information with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. I so appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you, Divas.
Okay.
That brings to a close another great, inspiring interview on Powering Through Life. And thanks again to my incredible guest, Joan Ridsdale, for sharing her thoughts and wisdom with our listeners today. So, Divas, if you would like to get in contact with Joan, you may contact her. All of her information will be listed under her segment, but you can also go to www.divasthatcarenetwork.com. Click on my picture, that's Teresa Sims, and you will find Joan and all of her information there. So thanks for listening to Powering Through Life on the Divas That Care Network.